The neighborhood development meeting will now be called to order. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore. Present. Alderman Villett.
Here.
Alderman Arnowitz. Vice Chair Ingracia. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Murphy.
Here.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Chairman Boyd.
Present.
We have 5 present and we have a quorum.
Okay, today we'll be hearing Board Bill 156, sponsored by Alderman Conway.
Morning, members of the committee.
Good morning.
Don't know why that was left there. I'm surprised nobody's walked off with it. Okay. Board Bill, let me get there, and I have some handouts. Is 4056 Detonty. And I am going to hand out a couple of pictures to pass around. 4056 Detonty was a vacant LRA lot. It had been vacant for years and years and years. If you happen to know where Detonty is, but it's the street that runs parallel to Highway 44. So there what you have is the pictures of the 2 adjacent properties and the picture of what you would see out your front door, out your living room, and out your bedroom. That scenic view that you get there at 4056 Detonty is Highway 44. That is also, the feds have considered that anything on Detonty a hazardous redevelopment and won't give us any type of low-income help on anything there just because of noise pollution. They have now incorporated noise pollution into their concept of where you can develop low to moderate income housing. We made arrangements with LRA to sell this developer this house or this vacant lot for $12,500. Part of the consideration is to make sure that it had 10-year tax abatement. And I kind of want to put it in perspective. If you look at the 2 buildings to the left in those pictures, the building immediately adjacent to the left, the city's appraised value is $51,400. The second building, where the second floor front porch doors are boarded up, but the building is occupied, the city's appraised value is $26,000. As a matter of fact, on this street of Detonty, in history, we have never had a house sell for that price, which is pretty amazing because I'd like to see who he's going to find to buy this house. But the most important thing is we're putting a vacant lot back in place. The numbers that the city provides you is assuming that the assessed value and the appraised value would be what the sales price is. Obviously, that's not. That's just a gross, erroneous error to assume that when the city comes back and does the actual reassessments, they're not going to assess that property at that price. Now, individual consumers or homeowners might like the idea of having a new home and might like the idea of overlooking Highway 44. You can get off the highway fairly close to there and get home. But we're quite moved by the fact that we'll have the opportunity to bring a young couple into the city to purchase that. And I want to put some of this in perspective. So when you look at the Shaw neighborhood in the past 14 years, we've more than doubled the assessed value with what we've done. Now, what does that mean for you and your wards? That when the city does reassessment, we can only come up with the same amount of real estate taxes, so that the communities that are rising faster in value reduces how much the communities where the housing isn't rising, their values, and then their real estate taxes go down. And then in the Shaw neighborhood of 7,000 people, we're paying double the real estate taxes to the city that we were 14 years ago. And that benefits all of the city. And when you look at a piece of property like this or much of the development you see in the city, you kind of look at some other things. We weren't collecting any money off that vacant lot, and I didn't see anything coming forward because it's been sitting there, I think, since 2004, just like what those pictures show you. But if I bring a young couple into the neighborhood and they put $200,000 down, whether it's this building or any other building, and they come up with just 5% down payment, which would be normal, their monthly payments would be $926 a month. That's a 30-year mortgage at 3.75%. That most people in the city can own a $200,000 or $225,000 home if they can come up with that down payment. And if that tax abatement is worth to a young couple that's struggling to buy their first house, that saves them almost $300 a month if we had actually reassessed it and appraised it at the amount that it's going to sell, which is just pipe dreams. But that saves them $300 a month. And that allows us to make housing available to young people who are going to move up and be a part of the fabric of this community. And I want to really, for all of you to understand that if someone borrows $170,000, which means buy a $195,000 house, their monthly payment is only $787 a month. If they borrow $140,000, basically buying a $150,000 house, their monthly payment's $648. And the flip of it is we're making housing accessible to new people. The more people we have living in the city, the more taxes we generate. We are not giving up any money with tax abatement. We sold the lot to this developer, Rubicon, for $12,500. Now you look at someone who is borrowing $250,000 or buying a $250,000 house. That would be a husband and wife generally, each making $45,000, maybe $50,000 a year. It's $100,000 in income. The old rule of thumb is you don't buy a house that costs more than 2.5 times what you make. The people in all the mortgage foreclosure crisis, they were at 3, 4, interest only. Follow the rule that my mother told me. No more than 2.5 times what you make. But that's $100,000. And you know what we get here in the city of St. Louis? I get the 1% earnings tax on that $100,000. That's $1,000 a year. And that employer of those two people pay us the payroll tax. And that's $500 a year. And then when you look next, well, what are they going to do if they live in the city of St. Louis? Well, they'll have disposable income, $30,000 a year of disposable income, because they're going to make payments a year of, between insurance, taxes, and whatnot, maybe $18,000. They're going to have disposable income of $30,000 a year. You know what our sales tax rate is? I mean, we're among the highest in the region, but close to 8%. That's $2,400 a year in sales tax being paid in the local economy. They will buy cars in the city. We will get the personal property tax on that. These types of situations work. We bring people into the city. That is the most important thing, is grow our population base, grow our earnings capacity, generate funds for the city, because we were never going to get any more money on that lot. But in 10 years, whatever it appraises out, we, the city, are in so much better place because we'll collect full blow on that real estate in the 11th year. I'll answer any questions you have.
Alderman Villa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman, isn't there's a whole bunch of new housing that parallels Interstate 44, isn't there?
On the north side, we did what's now called Botanical Heights, so it was McCreetown. We've also, we had these vacant lots on the next block west of this, where this property is an infill, and that is a large apartment development. We went through 4 developers before we ever got UIC. We picked developers, actually. We picked the McBride people, and they blew us off after they finished Botanical Heights. We picked Vote Tim Voigt's company. He obviously went out of business. I can't remember the third person. And UIC is doing the apartment buildings there. But those lots have been vacant where that's building for 20 years. And we've started with three previous developers and could never get anybody to actually economically do it. Because again, it is very difficult to get someone to want to live across the street from the highway. It's been a difficult mess. These people have been successful. They've decided to go more with the apartments than with the housing, though the UIC group does have 2 townhouses. That was kind of a final consideration to the community. But also, it's a positive reflection on us here in the city of St. Louis, because when you drive down Highway 44, you don't see the burnt-out, bombed-out buildings anymore that would be the normal front door for all of our friends who might come in from the county and say, well, this is a reflection of the city of St. Louis. So we feel very, very positive that over the next 10 or 12 years, we can have a dramatic impact on Detonty.
I don't have any further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Bill, Alderman, no, that's not the right one. Sorry. Alderman Moore.
Just a comment that you seem to know a lot about your community, so you don't have to talk that long on the next board bill.
Okay. We're not going to do the next board bill. We have some difficulties with the owner of that property, so we're going to hold that.
Alderwoman Gracia.
No questions.
Alderwoman Murphy.
No questions.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman, I had a lot of questions last week. I think SLDC was able to answer a lot of them. I think we can all appreciate that across the city, these abatements are coming under a significant amount of scrutiny, ones that we get personally on a very regular basis, and I hope we can all just appreciate that apparently, you know, for good reason, the city is, as a whole, is really taking a look at these. And so just a comment that I think we had talked, I know you missed the meeting last week, but there was a great deal of discussion about coordinating between HUD's committee and neighborhood development and getting on some comprehensive sort of plan on how to deal with abatements and TIFs across the city. That's all I have at the time. Thank you.
Well, and I think it's you know, when I see the people out there commenting on what tax abatement is or isn't, you know, I think we all have a responsibility to demonstrate what it is and what it can do and how we grow the city of St. Louis. And it's not just the real estate values, it's the future generations of getting these people into the city of St. Louis. And I think that's everybody in the room's obligation. The one thing you know is I don't shy away because I feel so positive, and I hope that I can demonstrate to all of my colleagues here that you can make a difference, you can make that housing affordable. You know, a $140,000 home, I mean, you can own it for $160,000 home, you can own it for $650 a month. I mean, most people are paying more rent than that. And I've always said that most people in the city of St. Louis are a down payment away from owning a house. And you can make a difference because when the couples are younger, their earning capacity isn't as high. So you get them in, and as the earlier stages of their lives, they come in at a reasonable rate, become productive members of our community, their job opportunities grow. That's with most people. You know, you get promoted, you work harder, you get raises. And then in the 10th year, you can afford that extra $200 or $300 a month. And you'll be happy. Well, you know, sometimes they're not happy. When we get the reassessments, I assure you, in the 8th Ward, I get a lot of complaints, especially this last round, because we did the school tax increase. And so the bills were not a happy time. And you got to remember, if I double the values, then the people's taxes not only because go up at a faster rate, but then also with the school tax that we put on, they went up significantly in the 8th Ward. So I would move for your favorable consideration.
I don't think you can make that motion.
I would request your favorable consideration.
Okay. I was just trying to do some calculations real quick. 5,400 times. Okay. I think some of the concern that the committee has is, you know, there's some wards that are doing 5%, like in Ben Park, for example, and you look at the valuation of what vacant land and housing cost over there, then you look at Shaw, which is more for kind of a upscale or premier, more premier than Benton Park West, which is more premier than
We
Hamilton
appreciate
Heights. And we're just kind of hoping that, let me ask you this, do you think at some point in the near future that tax abatement in the Shaw neighborhood would kind of level out to around 5% no matter, 5 years no matter what?
Right now, what we're doing, if you're familiar with the Shaw neighborhood, like all of the shootings and, you know, all of that, and if you drive along 44, it's still not pretty when you get to the city blocks, but, and Zach had told me that actually, if Detonty is bad a condition that street of Detonty was not in the Shaw neighborhood, it would be an E or an F market, okay? Just that. So what we do, and Zach's got the drill, but anything north of Flora, which is historically, when you go back to the early 80s in the Shaw neighborhood, and Tom was around, the vast majority of the development was in the southeast quadrant of the Shaw neighborhood near Magnolia in Green. And when you look at the bills that we bring in for the Shaw neighborhood, basically anything south of Flora Place is 5 years. Anything north of Flora Place can be 10 years, just because before me, and then that's where, you know, our node of strength was during my tenure. That's where we could lure developers in. Detonty has always been, and Shaw has always been a very, very difficult place to do redevelopment. But that is kind of the process that we have in the 8th Ward right now. They took this to the LRA board. LRA board, you know, agreed that 10 years is the right number for this property.
The LRA or the LCRA?
I'm sorry, LCRA.
Okay. I just happen to look at LRA's price list of how they do vacant lots and how in one neighborhood it's this amount, another neighborhood it's, you know, a greater amount. For example, in the Hamilton Heights neighborhood, a vacant lot would be 95 cents a square foot. But in the Shaw neighborhood, it's $3.50.
Right, and right now I do not have that many vacant lots, but then again, this guy paid $12,500 for that lot that's in that picture. And that lot in that picture, when you look at these vacant lots in the city of St. Louis, you have to appreciate there's a basement that has to be excavated out, which adds significant cost to just getting started. When the city tore down these buildings, they don't take out those basements. And so those are obstacles that are overcome. And you got to appreciate the fact that when I started, the property in the Shaw neighborhood was 25 and 50 cents a square foot. And now, I never did. I really worked my butt off to try to save the buildings before they ever got demoed. You know, that was a crisis that we had. We were on the verge of collapse. You look immediately north of me, which was called McCreetown, and actually that was part of Shaw neighborhood when I was a kid until they put in Highway 44 and it got cut off. And then they got cut off from, you know, the rest of the community, went on their own, and became McCreetown. Now it's Botanical Heights. And the crisis that confronted me, because that was the 8th Ward when we did that redevelopment plan, the crisis that confronted us was how much could, how could we sustain a community where 60% of the ground was already owned by LRA in the city of St. Louis? That was the great opportunity there to bring in new housing. All of that tax abatement, trying to count the years here, is all gone. And all of those people in those new homes are paying full blow and are paying earnings tax, sales taxes, personal property tax. And that is a classic example of getting something done, bringing people in, and providing revenue to the city for the needs that we have for the city as a whole.
All righty. I have no further questions. Are there any follow-up questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to pass Board Bill 156 out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
So moved.
It's been moved and second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore. Aye. Alderman Villa.
Aye.
Vice Chair Ingracia.
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Chairman Boyd.
Aye.
We have 6 ayes and 0 noes.
Board Bill 156 comes out of committee with due pass recommendation. Thank you.
And we're not going to hear the other bill until we finalize some things with the homeowners.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, Neighborhood Development Committee is adjourned.